My name is Gianfranco Berardi, my pronouns are he, him, his, and I encourage curiosity and support creativity through my solo indie game development studio, GB Games LLC. This is the Freshly Squeezed Progress Report companion video to go with the Freshly Squeezed Progress Report blog post I published earlier this week. Check the link in the description below. In last week's report, I created animated transition between rooms in The Dungeon Under My House, my second Freshly Squeezed entertainment project. If you've been following along, you know that The Dungeon Under My House will be a non-violent, first-person dungeon crawler, and as a Freshly Squeezed entertainment project, it will be a polished, playable prototype that provides a complete entertainment experience. It will be freely available for desktop computers, as well as mobile devices, with no ads, no in-app purchases, and no personal data tracking. I'm going to start by saying that these bouncy walks are adorable. I love how well this simple change makes things look. Transitions between rooms are technically a little slower, yet they feel much more satisfying. I then wanted to work on the dungeon, but I realized that I hated the intro sequence and wanted to improve it. Before, it was essentially a long, unskippable cutscene, and I wanted to make it more interactive. Now I've split it into a few portions. First is the actual intro, which establishes the main character, the Explorers Club, the idea that the kids are in a boring town, where nothing interesting happens, and the fact that there is a new member joining. At this point, you can interact with everyone in the room. Getting to know the people here. But until I add some more dialogue, the most interesting thing you can do is talk to Pat, who's joining the club. You can ask Pat about the club, and the response is to allow you to start the initiation ceremony. At this point, the initiation ceremony is scripted, but it is still interactive. You can ask one of 3 questions in any order, and when all have been asked, you can then move on to Pat reciting the oath. The way the game tracks those questions is hard-coded into this intro sequence. It doesn't matter what order you ask these questions, but in a future similar interaction, it could very much make it more meaningful and impactful, and require more consideration by the player in terms of deciding which options to pick and in what order. In fact, I think I'd like to revisit this intro again to see if I can do something like that to make sure the choice matters more. Now, Pat reciting the oath might be a little long, but once it's over, the Explorers Club has a new member. And the intro sequence here ends with the club members remembering that there's nothing to do in this boring town. Now, I would love for the player to have free movement and action immediately, but I think for simplicity, for me as a developer and for the player, I want the player to stay in the room until they initiate the ceremony. While I had triggers that cause scripts to run when the player enters the room, I needed to add a trigger when attempting to exit a room. So now if you try to leave before starting the ceremony, you get this script, which obviously the ceremony is over, so I need to continue working on making the intro sequence a bit better. Again, I'd love to have more freedom for the player, but I decided it was more important for the player to become familiar with the characters and the main dialogue mechanics of the game by needing to interact with them before doing anything else. My next tasks are to make the intro more interactive by updating the sequence in which the player leaves the room to get snacks, and eventually discovers the dungeon in the basement, and I'm looking forward to get back in there. Thanks for watching. Stay curious. Now if you want to learn when I release The Dungeon Under My House, or about future freshly squeezed entertainment games I'm creating, then sign up for the GB Games Curiosities newsletter, and download full-color player's guides to my existing and future games for free. Again, check the links in the description.